So far, I've tracked over 800 hours using Dreaming Spanish. Is it any good? Does it work? What can you expect at each level? Well, I've watched every single Dreaming Spanish video in the Spanish from Spain, as well as an absolute ton of the Latin American ones too. So I'm going to walk you through the platform and my experience. So for context, I have been using Dreaming Spanish for about a year now. So the 800 hours that I've got has been in just over 12 months. That number also includes the time I spent not only using Dreaming Spanish videos, but also using Spanish Uncovered, as well as some crosstalk lessons, podcast and YouTube. But the vast majority of that number has been using Dreaming Spanish. So you know the general format. Pablo or one of the tutors, guides, hosts, whatever we're saying. Anyway, they'll talk about something only in Spanish and they'll make it more comprehensible by drawing or explaining it or varying their vocabulary depending on your level. The premise is based on comprehensible input. You focus on understanding the message and the content is adapted for you. And then hopefully you'll naturally understand the language without having to resort to translation. Pablo explains the theory behind this if you want to know about it on the methods section of the website. Basically, our brains form a model of the language in our heads without us consciously having to force it. So with enough input, we can acquire all of the language, including all of the grammar. So if you're watching the videos and you're not sure if you're learning anything, something very cool happened to me early on in using it that made me realize how powerful it is. So I was very much a beginner when my brother-in-law's wife, which I think in English is my sister-in-law, I'm not sure, let me know in the comments, she said in Spanish to my niece, come sus fresas, which means eat your strawberries. And in that moment, I was like, ah. I didn't have to think, come. Yeah, I remember that's comer, tus, which is yours, fresas, so strawberries. But yeah, that's eat your strawberries, by which time everybody's finished eating and they've left the room. Instead of that, come sus fresas. Boom, like I was hit by lightning or something. I instantly understood. There was no pause, no translating. It was like it was said in English. But if English was Spanish and I was fluent in Spanish, if you know what I mean. So from that point on, I was sold on the idea of massive amounts of input without trying to break down all the nuts and bolts. My only job would be to try and understand the videos by Pablo and the team. Now, I made it my goal, first of all, to watch every Dreaming Spanish video. And after a while, I changed that so that my goal was to watch all of the videos from speakers from Spain. And the reason being, I felt that it would help my understanding of grammar if people were sticking to using either vosotros instead of ustedes, which varies depending on where the speaker's from. If you're watching TV or listening to podcasts or anything like that, the speakers could be from any Spanish-speaking country. So being used to both is still a necessity, though if you speak it, it kind of makes sense to use either one or the other, which is why I later decided to focus on the Spanish from Spain. Let me take you through my experience right from the beginning. I saw the YouTube channel and jumped straight in and I went to the website and I signed up and got the premium content too. If you're not a premium user, let me say this, the experience is way, way better on the website. It's not simply that it has more content, but there are a lot more features that really help to improve the experience. So once you're on the landing page, you log on and you're greeted with the watch page. You have a ton of filters here where you can watch videos depending on the level you're at or the topic you're interested in, the accent you might want to hear. So I love going through Sandra's, Alma's and Pablo's videos. It really feels like over time you get to know the hosts, which is a bit weird because I've never spoken to them. I've watched some videos multiple times and I don't know if that updates the total number of videos watched, but it's not really important. Basically, it still records your minutes in the same way. Something that is worth saying is that if you watch it through the website, there are no adverts. So if you're used to watching it on YouTube, the experience is going to be so much better through the website. And the website is configured for mobile too, so you have all the functionality that you have on your phone as you would have on the desktop anyway. The only thing I do notice is that sometimes the autoplay doesn't seem to work on my phone in the same way. I don't know if it's my phone or what, but you have to sometimes tap play to play the next video, which is not the end of the world actually, but if you're watching more of the advanced videos, I'm often doing something else at the same time, like cooking or something like that, something I don't have to think that much about. But it does mean that if my hands are busy, I have to stop and then go and press play. In the year I've been using it though, there have been like an absolute ton of updates, so I'm sure that will get ironed out in due course anyway. You will have an idea of the types of content you get just from obviously watching the YouTube channel. There are different hosts and they will speak about different topics, which might be short stories, cultural events. Some of the topics can be a bit random, but I would say that your experience improves as your Spanish gets better because the hosts are then able to talk more freely about the different subjects without having to rely on the visual prompts. So the super beginner videos rely heavily on the visual clues from pictures and drawings, and that means that you can start to understand Spanish without having to rely on any translations. And as you go through the levels, of course, eventually the hosts just explain new words or concepts in Spanish without having to resort to drawing any pictures or anything else like that. The super beginner videos are not as engaging as the advanced videos, but I think just focusing on picking up the language makes the process enjoyable enough. I think you have to try to enjoy the process of increasing your understanding initially rather than necessarily finding the content fascinating. But ultimately, it's hard to produce content that is hugely compelling when you literally know zero Spanish. So in some of the older videos, the audio quality isn't as great and not all the hosts are as good as the more experienced ones, but with the sheer number of hours you need to watch, I wouldn't really worry at all. Some of the older videos don't have the same quality as the newer ones, but there is still something rustic and charming about them, and Adria is still hilarious. Ultimately, the production quality doesn't really matter if the method works, right? Some of the earlier videos, by that I mean the beginner and super beginner ones, they are way more basic. But as a complete beginner, you can't expect to have hugely compelling content, but once you get to say like a more intermediate level, there's a lot more stuff to get your teeth into. So Pablo did a series on the history of Spain, for example, which was awesome, and the Spanish in it wasn't too difficult. More of that for other Latin American countries would be great as well, like the history of Mexico, for example, would be awesome to see. And I'd say in the future it'd be kind of cool to have some like more formal interviews or even some easier documentaries for learners. You also have the progress page. So I found this amazing, genuinely. First of all, the surprising thing I found was the benefit in it automatically just tracking your hours. Every minute you watch, it instantly updates the number of hours you've done. This gives you a little bit of serotonin each time you see that number go up. So yes, you could try and break down the numbers here a bit more and present it differently, but honestly, this is pretty simple and I think it does the job. You can scroll down and see the levels below. So here it will tell you more detail on the level you're at, what you need to do at your current level, and also you can click on the others to see what to expect as you move forward. Now, I thought this was an absolute goldmine if you're a less experienced learner, and the advice is absolutely solid. What I found interesting about the numbers page was that you can work out where you're going to be in the future and at what time you're likely to reach that level. That is, of course, providing on average you hit your target daily hours. You can see what that means, however many hours a month in total, which means in 2 months I'll be here, in 3 months I'll be here, and it also makes you realize that an extra 30 minutes a day can really rack up over time. I found that really motivating to be able to work out at what stage I was going to reach each level. There's also this section here where you can put in your own hours and do stuff like crosstalk lessons or listening to podcasts, so you're not confined to just using Dreaming Spanish videos. You can top up your total number of hours so that it's accurate here. So let's talk about the price. $8. That's it. It's such insanely good value for money that even if you don't use it all the time, it's still worth it. There are resources out there that are far more expensive and far less effective. I feel like in a review I should say something else about this, but there's nothing else to say. It's just really good value. This isn't sponsored. I'm not making any money from this. This is just my honest opinion. There are an insane number of videos as well. So for your $8, I think it says there are 2,500 private videos, but I think that number's probably gone up by now. And that doesn't even include all the public videos as well. So I don't know when the number was updated. Basically, you get an absolute mountain of content for your $8. So in terms of functionality, you can actually download the videos to watch or listen to offline. I've never done it, but should the mood strike you and you're trekking Everest and you really feel like you need to listen to Andrea La Mexicana on the top of Everest, you can do so with your downloaded videos. Oh, and there is a podcast feed as well. Did you know that? Basically, the videos have the audio downloaded. If you're a premium member, you can get a bit of code in the resources bit under your profile and pop that into whatever podcast app you use. So you don't need to worry about the videos, and you can have that in the background 24/7 if you wanted to. It is a useful feature. I don't use it personally, as I prefer to just play the videos and they can automatically record my minutes, and I can use the filters to get the right videos or something at the right level, or for me at the minute, the right accent. But you might find it useful, so it's good to know that it's an option for you. And beyond all this, there's a poster covering all the different levels and the language learning process. That is basically a map for you to follow, as well as the more detailed breakdown of the levels on the progress page. So what was my experience of the process? Yes, especially in the beginning, some of the content wasn't as engaging as I would have liked. But you have to think, if you've got a limited vocabulary, you can't expect to have a story where you're engrossed in it if you don't yet know much Spanish. So I'd say, first of all, focus on the novelty of understanding stuff in Spanish and be content with that first of all. You have to focus on the fact that over time, eventually you'll get more enjoyable content, and you will. The method does take faith. You have to trust that your brain's going to figure it out, and it definitely will. I'm now using native material, which I can understand as part of my daily input, and I haven't done any studying. I've made the mistake though in thinking that somehow being able to follow along with a video means that it's about the right level. The aim isn't to say, oh, I just about understood that advanced video, so now I'm at an advanced level, because if you only just about understood it, you're probably missing out on the stuff that you would pick up on if you had greater context for what you were watching. After all, it's not only knowing the words that are said, but you also need to pick up on the grammar implicitly, and you are not going to do that if you're struggling to understand what's going on. I think, and Pablo says this on the website, that you should try and watch videos that are quite easy, that you mostly understand, rather than trying to watch stuff that's too difficult, basically. So at this point, I have well over 800 hours, and I'm now moving on to using just advanced stuff for learners and easier native content, and I haven't studied at all. And that's largely thanks to Dreaming Spanish. So thank you, Pablo and the team. I've got into a habit where I watch and listen every single day, and over time, those hours have just racked up quite easily. So not only has this helped me learn Spanish, it's also cemented how I feel about language learning, and I feel like I've got a greater understanding of the process of acquisition for my brain at the very least. I'm still not speaking, so it will be interesting when I do. I feel like I'm hoping this has given me at least a solid and natural feeling for Spanish, and even though I'm not speaking, I can now watch native content and count that towards my daily hours of input, which is amazing because now I literally just watch YouTube of stuff that I would watch anyway, but it just happens to be in Spanish, and I'm acquiring Spanish without any effort at all. So in my opinion, this is what the future of language learning is going to look like, and I personally am very excited. So of course I recommend it. Hopefully over time some of the content will become more compelling for learners, but it's worked for me. Slight flex, but just to show you, if I change the filter to all of Spain, voila. Genuinely, it was actually a bit of a happy, sad moment. It was a sense of achievement, but also like, what do I do now? Another resource I used was Audiorich's Spanish Uncovered, which is where I really started my journey with Spanish. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck and enjoy the journey.